Hello and welcome back to another Bolt Action Deep Dive with Zorvix. In this video, I am discussing the army lists that were submitted for the Danish Nationals. In part 1, I discussed the nations, platoons, and some of the order dice information. In this second video, I'll dive a little deeper into the unit specifics. All images found in this presentation are copyright of Warlord Games and can be found on their website. This tournament is upcoming and uses 1,000 requisition points. Tank platoons are allowed, and currently there's 40 registrants. Of note, there might be a little bit of variance in the numbers from the actual event, because if I'm not mistaken, one list wasn't final when I took my numbers. I'm human, there might be a mistake or two. Even some of the numbers didn't match the veterancy level of what was in the list. I'm not too worried about that, but I did my best. The way I did this was consolidating like items into a category. For example, both the M3 Stuart and the M1542 are going to be machine gun platform vehicles. So those would be considered essentially the same thing. They have the same role for mowing down infantry. Starting off is the headquarters units, specifically the 2nd Lieutenant. There were 32 inexperienced and 10 regular. And to go along with that, there was, in fact, no variety whatsoever. The 2nd Lieutenant was the only thing being used, and this tells me that players in this meta think that officers are attacked and are going to be hidden during the game rather than on the front line. I'm a little disappointed. As a primarily German player myself, I'm a little surprised not to see any of the Fallschirmjäger 5-man assault rifle officers. But I did see couple of the players are using that 12th SS officer. Cheaper points, so they can get that 2nd platoon easier, but they do die on anything but one. So, gotta be watching out for that. There were 2 medics. Both of those were going to be in the US lists. Remember, however, that the Soviets didn't actually sign the Geneva Convention, so you can fire freely at these medics and the medics of their US allies with no regard. Send your snipers, use your HE, run them over with tanks, you name it, I encourage it. There were 2 air observers, 1 regular, 1 veteran. There are a couple lists that lacked the capability to prevent those airstrikes, so we'll see how many times they land on top of their own team. Those air observers are usually used in conjunction with an artillery observer. There were 9 of those, pretty considerable. However, typical considering the British get that free one. So in about 1/4 of the games, you'll be dealing with that for them. There were 13 anti-tank rifles. This is a huge number from what I expected. However, considering that tank platoons were allowed, I guess it turns out to be about right. These are going to be put to good use throughout the tournament, I suspect, based on the number of transports, the number of lighter vehicles that we are seeing. There were a total of 10 shaped charge support weapon teams that I saw. Again, these are going to be great for your zone control, and you'll see them in about 1/4 of the games you play. However, there were quite a few dog mines and suicide anti-tank teams as well. Just remember that in some scenarios, kill points will be counted, so losing these small teams can determine victory. Even if you are sending something out to kill a tank, if you're going 1-for-1 in order dice, it might not actually be worth it, even though the kill points are. There were 2 machine gun teams. This is no surprise. A lot of people think they are overcosted and underpowered for what they do. For the snipers, there were 13 regular and 4 veteran. Admittedly, this is rather surprising considering the number of inexperienced officers and forward observers that were present. Of those, only 1 list had 2 snipers. Moving on to mortars, there were 3 light mortars, 13 medium mortars, and 6 heavy mortars. Nothing surprising here. Typically, you'll see one of these HE weapons in about half of the games. Similarly, the howitzers, there were 6 light howitzers, 7 medium howitzers, and 3 heavy howitzers, which is about the same. You'll see those in about half the games you play. Interestingly, however, there were 9 howitzer armored fighting vehicles. These are going to be your Sherman 105s, your Horos, things like that. So be prepared to face off against any of those mobile howitzers. There were very few anti-tank guns. There were only 3 light anti-tank guns, 1 medium anti-tank gun that were stationary. However, there were quite a few autocannons. This means that people are looking for more for that dual-purpose capability of dealing with infantry and lighter vehicles, and also placing them to limit the approach, so kind of lock down that area. Lastly, for the HE, we've got the multiple launchers. You can expect to see multiple launcher across the table about half the time. There's 7 inexperienced and 11 vehicles. Admittedly, this number is lower than I expected, especially considering 5 of them are in the same list. 5 of those vehicle launchers are in one of the tank. Only 4 of the lists out of the 39 that I looked at have no indirect HE at all. So you're going to be dealing with mortars, howitzers, multiple launchers. You're going to have to be prepared to be mobile, figure out a way to either address them by getting to them quickly or to stay out of their area. Moving on to light vehicles, there were 9 regular machine gun vehicles. These are your small vehicles, just like 1 machine gun, motorcycle or Kuba wagon, a Jeep, something like that. The one step up from that is the multiple machine guns. That's your gas truck with a quad maxim, things like that. 3 inexperienced, 12 regular. So there's going to be a few vehicles that are putting a lot of dice down range, and you're going to have to figure out how to deal with those. There were 15 regular 7+ armored cars. Regular seems to be the popular theme here. These are going to have your light autocannon, maybe a machine gun here and there. Usually the capability to fight with both. And then similar to the light tank version, same thing. Light autocannon, maybe a light anti-tank gun, and a machine gun that can be fired at the same time. As for the medium vehicles, this is where the biggest theme, and once you get into these bigger vehicles, the trends start to be a lot more apparent. There were 3 inexperienced and 21 regular machine gun platform tanks. Now, that's actually 21 M3 Stewarts and 3 inexperienced M1441. There's no variety there whatsoever. So you will have to have a way to deal with those Stewarts. Which it looks like quite a few people have chosen the Panzer III and using the 8+ tanks to do so. There were 10 regular vehicles in that category. I think 7 of them were Panzer IIIs. There were a couple Panzer II that have the leaded tank gun as well. And then the biggest vehicles being brought were the 9+ tanks. There are 2 regular tanks. Both of them are in German lists. It's the Kugelblitz and the Grill. So, admittedly, a lot of the stuff we've seen doesn't have the capability to deal with that 9+. There aren't any big guns being brought. Moving on to the infantry squads. Now, admittedly, I didn't do a huge dive into the different loadouts and things that were being used, just more of an overview at the high level of these. There's 35 inexperienced, 65 regular, and 64 veteran. This equates to about 4 squads per list, which is pretty typical when you've got tank platoons and regular platoons. A lot of those inexperienced are going to be either front-loaded into one list or tacked on with the Soviet lists. So you're either going to see lots of inexperienced or you're going to have to deal with regulars and veterans. Of those, 10 regular squads and 25 veterans had flamethrowers in them. So about 40% of the veterans that you're going to have to deal with are going to have that flamethrower capability. Speaking of flamethrowers, there were additionally 10 teams with flamethrowers, 6 armored cars, and actually 1 tank with the flamethrower. The last category I wanted to discuss is the basic transports. In the small transports, 3 to 6 capacity, there were 6 inexperienced, 12 regular, 3 veteran. In the CWT and Dodge 3/4 ton category, there's 8 inexperienced, 10 regular. And then in your big category, the trucks, 4 inexperienced, 22 regular. Definitely real popular to transport those larger 8, 10-man squads in a truck. Often these will also have the machine gun to put out a few dice once they've done their transportation. I did carve out of that category some of the specialized transports. There are some 7+ open top transports that I wanted to highlight. 13 Ren carriers. Yes, they are good. Everyone knows that. Everybody wishes they could use them. There were quite a few tracked and half-tracked vehicles, 11 of them to be specific. A lot of these have transport capability. I think one was being used as a command vehicle because it's got a light anti-tank gun. But you'll see a few of those that can help survive against things like the anti-tank rifle, which are only going to kill it on or match its armor value on a 5. And then lastly, there's the tows. There were a total of 15 dedicated tows. Even the veteran one was only 18 points as a tractor, but the vast majority of these were the inexperienced horse lumber to pull on that artillery, the autocannon, things like that. Give a little mobility. And with that, everyone, you have a wonderful day.